On what should have been the happiest night of her life, a young bride uncovers a dark and twisted secret that shatters her world. This shocking tale of betrayal, forbidden desire, and fiery revenge will leave you questioning the length someone will go for justice. This story reveals how blind trust and deep secrets can lead to devastation, proving that even the closest relationships can hide unimaginable darkness. Don't miss the unraveling of this shocking tale. Like and subscribe to Crime Chronicles for more stories that expose the darkest corners of human behavior. Aaliyah Simmons, 26, had always dreamed of a fairy tale wedding, and as she stood beside her new husband, Jordan Simmons, 29, she felt like the luckiest woman alive. Their lavish wedding in the heart of Atlanta had been nothing short of spectacular, a grand ballroom filled with glittering chandeliers, tables adorned with fresh white roses, and hundreds of guests who couldn't stop talking about how perfect the couple seemed. As they danced their first dance as husband and wife, Aaliyah's heart swelled with joy. Everything was exactly as she had imagined. But what Aaliyah didn't know as she twirled in Jordan's arms, the soft music playing in the background, was that this night would not only mark the beginning of a new chapter in her life, it would also be the night that her world would unravel. The wedding had been meticulously planned, from the gown that hugged her curves to the ivory cake that stood taller than a child, but there was something beneath the surface of this perfect celebration. Aaliyah, blissfully unaware, felt like she had it all: her handsome husband, a future filled with promises, and the love of everyone around her. Jordan, ever the charming groom, seemed to be the epitome of a loving partner. His eyes, locked with hers on the dance floor, held a tenderness that made Aaliyah feel invincible. To the guests, they were the ideal couple, a match made in heaven. Little did Aaliyah know that as the evening carried on, her husband's true feelings would become buried beneath a mountain of secrets that no wedding vows could ever conceal. Among the guests was Monica Simmons, Jordan's mother, a strikingly glamorous woman who seemed to command attention wherever she went. At 45, Monica was the picture of sophistication, with her impeccable style and air of authority. But for all her beauty and grace, Monica had a reputation for being intrusive, particularly when it came to Jordan. Aaliyah had learned early on in their relationship that Monica and Jordan shared a close bond, almost too close for comfort. As the wedding festivities wound down, Monica approached Jordan and Aaliyah with a request that caught Aaliyah off guard. She complained about how exhausted she was and how it was too late for her to drive back to her own home. "It's been such a long day, and I'm utterly drained," Monica said, feigning helplessness. "I'll just sleep in one of the spare rooms in the suite. You won't even notice I'm here. I'll leave first thing in the morning." Aaliyah hesitated. This was supposed to be their night, the beginning of their life together, free from distractions. But Jordan, ever the doting son, quickly agreed. "It's fine, babe," he said, placing a reassuring hand on Aaliyah's shoulder. "Mom's just tired. She'll be gone before we even wake up." Aaliyah forced a smile, though she couldn't shake the feeling of unease. When they arrived at the luxurious penthouse suite, Monica wasted no time making herself comfortable. "This place is gorgeous," she said, glancing around approvingly. "You two really outdid yourselves." She settled into one of the guest rooms, leaving Jordan and Aaliyah to finally enjoy their first night as husband and wife. Despite Monica's presence, Aaliyah tried to focus on the romance of the evening. Jordan poured champagne, they toasted to their future, and he swept her off her feet in the way that had always made her feel cherished. For a while, Aaliyah managed to push Monica's intrusion out of her mind. Little did she know, the night was about to take a devastating turn that would change her life forever. The dim glow of the city skyline filtered through the curtains as Jordan and Aaliyah retreated to the master bedroom of the luxurious penthouse suite. The wedding had been a whirlwind of excitement, but now, it was just the two of them. Jordan poured them both a glass of champagne, the bubbles fizzing softly in the crystal flutes. "To us," he toasted, his warm gaze locking with Aaliyah's. She smiled, feeling the weight of the day's joy and exhaustion settle over her. As they sat on the edge of the bed, Jordan leaned in, his hands gently caressing her shoulders before pulling her closer. Aaliyah melted into his embrace, savoring the intimacy they had waited months to fully experience. Their laughter echoed softly in the room as they shed the formalities of the day, and soon, their connection deepened into something more intimate and tender. Hours later, wrapped in a blanket of post-wedding bliss, Aaliyah began to drift off to sleep. Her head rested against Jordan's chest, his rhythmic breathing lulling her into a peaceful state. But as she hovered on the edge of slumber, she felt him stir beside her. "Jordan," she murmured sleepily, her voice barely above a whisper. "Go back to sleep, babe," he said softly, his voice tinged with a nervous edge that made her eyes snap open. She watched through half-closed lids as he slipped out of bed, careful not to make any noise. He moved with an unusual urgency, grabbing his phone and slipping on his robe before quietly leaving the room. Aaliyah sat up, her heart pounding. Where could he be going at this hour? She wondered. Her instincts told her something wasn't right. She waited a moment, hoping he'd come back, but when the door didn't reopen, she swung her legs over the side of the bed and followed. The suite was silent, save for the faint hum of the air conditioning. Aaliyah's bare feet padded softly across the plush carpet as she moved through the hallway, her curiosity and unease growing with every step. She saw the faint light seeping out from under the door to Monica's room and froze. As she stood there, holding her breath, she heard muffled voices. Jordan's low, familiar tone carried through the crack in the door. "You know how much you mean to me," he said, his voice filled with a mix of passion and urgency. "Jordan," Monica replied, her voice dripping with both affection and warning, "we can't keep doing this. She'll find out eventually." Aaliyah's blood ran cold. She pressed her hand against her mouth to stifle the gasp threatening to escape. The truth was dawning on her, but it felt too horrifying to fully comprehend. Her legs trembled, and her mind raced as she tried to process what she was hearing. The murmur of voices continued, punctuated by a soft laugh from Monica that made Aaliyah's stomach churn. This can't be real, she thought, her heart shattering into pieces as she realized that her husband, her new husband, was in the room with his own mother. Aaliyah leaned closer, unable to stop herself from peeking through the slight crack in the door. What she saw froze her in place, Jordan, standing close to Monica, his hands lingering in ways that no sons ever should. The betrayal hit her like a freight train, leaving her breathless and disoriented. Her wedding night had transformed into a nightmare, and she knew this was only the beginning of what would unravel. Aaliyah's heart pounded as she pressed herself against the wall outside Monica's door, her mind racing with the horrifying implications of what she had just overheard. She wanted to turn away, to retreat to the bedroom and pretend she hadn't heard anything, but the curiosity, and dread, was too overwhelming. Summoning every ounce of courage, she leaned forward and nudged the door open just enough to see inside. What she saw made her blood run cold. Jordan stood close to Monica, his hands resting on her waist as they whispered to each other in hushed tones. Monica, dressed in a silk robe that hung loosely over her shoulders, reached up to touch Jordan's face with an unsettling intimacy. Then, without hesitation, she leaned in and kissed him, not a motherly peck on the cheek, but a lingering, intimate kiss that left no room for misinterpretation. Aaliyah's hand shot to her mouth to stifle a gasp, but the sound of her breath hitching caught their attention. Monica's head whipped toward the door, her eyes widening in shock, while Jordan froze in place, his expression shifting from surprise to dread. "Aaliyah!" Jordan exclaimed, stepping away from Monica as if putting distance between them could erase what she had just witnessed. Aaliyah pushed the door open fully, her face pale and her hands trembling. "What the hell is going on here?" she demanded, her voice breaking as tears welled in her eyes. Monica, ever the composed and calculating figure, folded her arms and smirked. "It's not what it looks like, dear," she said, her tone dripping with condescension. "Not what it looks like?" Aaliyah snapped, her voice rising. "I just saw you kiss your son. Do you think I'm blind?" Or stupid? Jordan stepped forward, his hands raised as if to calm her. Aaliyah, listen to me, he pleaded, his voice desperate. It's not what you think. He stumbled over his words, struggling to find an explanation that could possibly make sense. Save it. Aaliyah yelled, her anger cutting through the fog of her disbelief. She turned her attention to Monica. You've been interfering in our lives from the start, but this? This is sick. Monica shrugged, unfazed by Aaliyah's fury. You don't understand our relationship, she said coolly. Jordan and I have a bond that you'll never be able to break. Aaliyah's stomach churned as her world came crashing down. She looked at Jordan, searching his face for a shred of remorse, but all she saw was fear and shame. How could you do this to me? She asked, her voice breaking. On our wedding night, no less. Jordan stepped closer, his hands trembling. I didn't want this, Aaliyah, he said, his voice cracking. She's been controlling me for years. I never wanted it to happen. I love you, not her. Don't you dare blame this on her. Aaliyah shot back, her voice a mix of fury and heartbreak. You're a grown man, Jordan. You had a choice, and you chose this. The confrontation spiraled into chaos as Aaliyah's emotions boiled over. She couldn't reconcile the man she had just married with the man standing before her now. The betrayal was too deep, too vile, and the pain too raw to comprehend. I can't even look at you, she spat, her tears streaming freely now. You've ruined everything. Jordan reached for her, but Aaliyah stepped back, her resolve hardening. She turned and stormed out of the room, leaving Jordan and Monica standing in stunned silence. The perfect wedding night she had envisioned was now a nightmare she couldn't escape. Aaliyah slammed the bedroom door behind her, her chest heaving with a mix of rage and despair. She paced the room, her mind spinning with the betrayal she had just uncovered. The man she had promised to spend the rest of her life with, the man she trusted implicitly, had shattered her world in a single night, and with his own mother. She heard the muffled sound of footsteps in the hallway and tensed as the door creaked open slightly. Jordan stepped inside, his face etched with guilt and fear. Aaliyah, he began, his voice low and pleading. Please, let me explain. Get out, she said through gritted teeth, her voice dangerously calm. Just listen to me, he insisted, stepping closer. I said, get out, she screamed, her voice cracking with fury. I need space, Jordan. I can't even look at you right now. Jordan hesitated, his shoulders slumping in defeat. Fine, he said quietly. But we'll talk about this in the morning. I love you, Aaliyah. Don't you dare say that to me, she hissed, glaring at him with eyes full of hatred. He turned and left the room, closing the door softly behind him. Aaliyah sank onto the edge of the bed, her head in her hands as tears spilled down her cheeks. Her heartbreak quickly morphed into something darker, an all-consuming fury that made her chest tighten. Moments later, she heard the faint creak of a door down the hallway. Her heart dropped when she realized Jordan hadn't gone to sleep on the couch or a different room. He had gone back to Monica's room. Her nails dug into her palms as she clenched her fists. So he wasn't even ashamed? He wasn't even going to try to make things right? He's choosing her again. The thought twisted in her mind, feeding the fire of her anger. The hours crept by as Aaliyah sat in the dimly lit room, her emotions churning like a storm. Her thoughts bounced between disbelief, humiliation, and an unbearable need for vengeance. Images of Jordan and Monica's betrayal replayed in her mind like a broken record, fueling her desire to make them pay for what they had done to her. By dawn, she was no longer the heartbroken bride from hours earlier. The Aaliyah sitting on the edge of the bed now was colder, sharper, and utterly consumed by a singular thought: they will regret this. Her eyes flicked toward the lighter she had packed in her purse, a small accessory she carried to light scented candles. She reached for it, running her fingers over the metal surface as an idea began to take shape in her mind. Aaliyah stood and walked to the window, staring out at the morning light breaking over Atlanta. The city she had loved now felt foreign, just as her life now felt alien. But one thing was certain: by the end of the day, Jordan and Monica would feel the searing weight of her pain. Aaliyah spent the early hours of the morning rehearsing her plan in her mind. Her tears had dried, replaced by a cold determination. She couldn't let this betrayal go unanswered. Grabbing the lighter from her purse and a bottle of Monica's expensive, highly flammable perfume she had seen earlier in the bathroom, Aaliyah set her plan into motion. The suite was quiet. The only sounds were the faint hum of the air conditioning and the occasional creak of the building settling. Aaliyah moved silently, her steps deliberate as she approached Monica's room. She could hear the soft, rhythmic snores of Jordan and Monica inside, their betrayal burned into her mind. "This is what you deserve," she thought, gripping the perfume tightly. She unscrewed the cap of the bottle and began spraying the liquid across the carpet outside the door, soaking the plush fibers. She traced a line of perfume leading from the door to the walls around the room's entrance, creating a perimeter of flammable liquid. Her hands shook, but not from fear. From the adrenaline coursing through her veins. Once the perfume was thoroughly spread, Aaliyah stood back and flicked the lighter. The small flame danced in the dim hallway, its flicker illuminating her resolute expression. She hesitated for only a moment, her mind racing with images of Jordan's betrayal, Monica's smugness, and her own shattered life. She dropped the flame onto the perfume-soaked carpet. The fire roared to life instantly, the flames hungrily devouring the alcohol-infused liquid. The heat intensified as the fire spread rapidly, climbing the walls and licking at the door. Thick smoke began to curl under the frame, seeping into the room. Aaliyah stepped back, retreating to the main suite's living room where she could still see the hallway leading to Monica's room. The fire's crackling grew louder, the orange glow casting eerie shadows across the walls. It didn't take long for the screams to start. "Aaliyah! What's happening?" Jordan's panicked voice rang out, muffled by the door and the growing roar of the flames. Aaliyah said nothing. She stood frozen, watching the inferno she had created. "Help! Somebody help!" Monica's shrill voice joined Jordan's, the sound grating against Aaliyah's ears. She could hear their loud screams, their desperate attempts to escape drowned out by the relentless crackling of the fire. The flames had already reached the ceiling, trapping them inside. The smoke alarms finally began blaring, but Aaliyah didn't flinch. She watched as the fire spread further, consuming everything in its path. When the screams turned into choking gasps and then fell silent, Aaliyah turned and walked toward the suite's main entrance. She slipped out unnoticed, blending into the morning chaos of the hotel lobby as guests and staff began evacuating. By the time firefighters arrived, it was too late. The room had been entirely consumed by the flames, leaving nothing but charred remnants of their bodies. Jordan and Monica's lifeless bodies were discovered huddled near the door, their final moments spent in agony as they tried to escape the hell Aaliyah had unleashed. After the fire was extinguished, the scene was nothing short of devastating. The suite had been engulfed in flames, leaving only a charred shell of what once was. Jordan and Monica's bodies were found in the remains, their identities confirmed through dental records and personal effects. The fire had done its work, burning everything in its path, including the evidence. The investigators were left with nothing but suspicion and a mounting pile of questions. The hotel's security footage revealed Aaliyah's movements that night. She had entered the hallway around the time the fire began, walking past the camera near the elevator with a calm demeanor that didn't immediately raise suspicion. However, her presence during the critical moments of the fire would later prove significant. A closer look at the footage showed that she had not returned to the suite after the fire had started. The first major breakthrough came when hotel staff members, who had been working the late shift, recalled seeing Aaliyah in the hotel lobby moments before the fire broke out. One of the hotel staff confirmed that Aaliyah had mentioned that she was having trouble sleeping and needed a moment to herself. She had even asked the front desk clerk if there were any other available rooms in the hotel, though she never booked one. But it was Aaliyah's personal items found near the scene that sealed her fate. Investigators combed through trash bins outside the hotel and discovered a lighter with traces of soot on it, a small, easily disposable item that Aaliyah had discarded in her haste. Alongside the lighter was a half-used bottle of perfume, a key element in how the fire had been started. It was determined that Aaliyah had used the perfume to accelerate the flames, lighting the fire at the entrance to trap Jordan and Monica in the room. Aaliyah's phone also became a critical piece of evidence. While it didn't contain incriminating text messages, the location history showed that she had been near the hotel just before and after the fire. A few hours earlier, she had searched for articles about hotel fires, a seemingly innocent inquiry that had an eerie timing. When the authorities tracked her down and arrested her, Aaliyah didn't deny her involvement. She admitted, in a calm and detached manner, that she had set the fire to avenge the betrayal she had uncovered. They deserved it, she told the officers, her voice unwavering. The judge, after deliberating, sentenced Aaliyah to 30 years for the murder of her husband, Jordan, and an additional 25 years for the murder of her mother-in-law, Monica. The sentences were to run consecutively, ensuring that Aaliyah would spend the remainder of her life behind bars. The judge emphasized the brutality of the crime, the deliberate manner in which she had set the fire, and the extent of the betrayal that had triggered the horrific chain of events. The trial ended with the courtroom divided. Some people felt sympathy for Aaliyah, believing that the betrayal was so profound that it justified her actions. Others, however, could not fathom the depths of rage that led to such a brutal act. Regardless of where the public stood, Aaliyah's fate was sealed: life in prison for the double murder and the fire that had taken everything from her. This tragic story highlights the devastating consequences of betrayal and the destruction that can arise when dark secrets are brought to light. It serves as a stark reminder of how trust, once broken, can spiral into irreversible acts of violence and heartbreak. Could you ever forgive such a betrayal, or would rage consume you as it did Aaliyah? If you were shocked by this story, don't miss out on more unsettling tales. Subscribe to Crime Chronicles for the most gripping true crime stories that reveal the hidden darkness in human relationships.